Arriving in now is the 11:22 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven.
Platform 2 is the 11:22 service to Leven. This train is for all 4 carriages.
And this, here it is, 158740. We will get the rear when it departs. Arriving in now is the 11:18 Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley, 334025 and 334018, and departing out now is the 11:22 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven, and the rear is 158736. Departing out now is the 11:18 Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 11:22 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley, 385012.
The next train at platform 1 will be the 11:30 service to Edinburgh. This train is for all 3 carriages.
And the rear is 385010. We'll see this one head out in a couple of minutes. Departing out now is the delayed 11:22 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Glasgow Edinburgh Waverley. Keep your mouth on, dude. And this train's departing at about 5 minutes late.
The train at platform 1 is the 11.
Arriving in now is the 11:30 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. And this one is 170451. And that train is absolutely rammed. Departing out now is the 11:30 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley.
The train arriving at platform 4 is the 11:31 service to Glasgow Central. This train is for all 3 carriages.
Arriving in over here is the 11:31 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central, which is 385027. Arriving in now is the 11:29 Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh Waverley. And it's 385103. And the rear is 385120. Departing out now is the 11:29 Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in over here is the 11:34 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley, 173.95. And arriving in over here is the 11:35 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Aberdeen. And the front is 43152 is on the front, and we'll get the rear when it departs. Departing out now is the 11:35 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Aberdeen. .134 is on the rear. Arriving in now is the 11:38 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane. 385-010 again. We will get the rear when it departs. And passing through now is 170-426 on an ECS. And arriving in now is the 11:39 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. And it is 158-722. And we shall get the rear when it departs. And departing out now is the 385-012 is on the rear. That was the, I don't know what that was. Anyway, Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane. Departing out now is the 11:39 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. One 158-718 is on the rear.
The next train at platform.
Arriving in now is the 11:43 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Helensburgh Central, which is 334018 on the front. And we'll get the rear, which is... Nah, we'll get it when it departs out. Arriving in now is the 11:44 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley. 385031. Should be getting Helensburgh Central away to come out very soon. And there it goes. And the rear is 334025. Departing out now is the 11:44 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley.
£10. You can buy a ticket before you board using the Scotrail app, our website, or any station ticket machine or ticket.
Arriving in now is the 11:49 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. 158733 on that service. Oh, and we have a Glasgow Queen Street service who has just come back. We'll get him in a minute. Arriving in over here is the 11:52 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to... Wait, no, this is ECS. $43,177. Oh, and departing out now is, I believe, is the 11:49 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Queen Street. 385103 is on the rear. 385120 is on the front. And here goes the ECS. $43,003 on the rear. Arriving in now is the 11:48 Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley. 334039's on the front. And 334033 is on the rear. Departing out now is the 11:48 Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley.
The next train on platform B will be the 11:52 service to Edinburgh. This train is on to...
Arriving in now is the 11:52 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. 173.95 back again. Departing out now is the 11:52 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. Arriving in now is the 11:52 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley, 385102. See that depart out very shortly. Departing out now is the 11:52 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley. This train is running about 3 minutes late.
The next train at platform 3 will be the 11:50.
Arriving in now is the 11:58 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley, 385043. We'll see this one come out very shortly.
The next train at platform 1 will be the
Departing out now is the 11:58 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in over here is the 1200 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. 158706. And 158703 on that one. Oh, and arriving in over here is also the 1200 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central, 385031.
The next train at platform 2 will be the
Arriving in now, we have a Scotrail service 385111. And 385124 is back again. Departing out now is a Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in now is the 1202 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee, 17410. Departing out now is the 1202 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee. And arriving in over here is the 1204 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central, which is 385028. Departing out now is the 1204 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central.
The train arriving at platform 1 is the 1207 service to Edinburgh. This train is one of 3 packages.
And arriving in now, we have a Scotrail service from, to Edinburgh. I believe that's from Leven. Departing out now is the 12:07 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 12:09 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane, which is 385,102.
This train is formed of 3 carriages.
Departing out now is the 12:10 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane. And arriving in over here is the 12:10 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Departing out now is the 12:10 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Arriving in now is the 12:13 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Helensburgh Central. 334033 is on the front. And we will get the rear when it departs. Departing out now is the 12:10 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Helensburgh Central. And it is 334039 on the rear.
Electronic train being in front of this one, please listen for further announcements.
Arriving in now is the 12.
So once again, any passengers travelling to Lockerbie or Oxford, can you please make yourself known?
Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley.
Platform 3 is the
158721. And arriving in at the same time is the 12:19 Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street. Wait, no, Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley.
The next train at platform 4 will be the 12:20.
Departing out now is the 12:15 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. Departing out about 2 minutes late. We shall see this one from Dunblane departing out soon.
The next train at platform 1 will be the 12.
Arriving in now is the 12:21 Scotrail LNER service from Aberdeen to London King's Cross, 800 104. And arriving in... Wait, no, this is 158 on an ECS.
Edinburgh.
158703. And 158706. Arriving in now is the delayed 1214 Scotrail Avanti West Coast service from London Euston to Edinburgh Waverley, which this time is 39138. And departing out now is the 1221 LNER service from Aberdeen to London King's Cross. Arriving in now is the 1224 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leavin. And departing out over here is the delayed 1214 Scotrail service from Avanti West Coast service from London Euston to Edinburgh Waverley. This train's departing out about 9 minutes late. Departing out now is the 1224 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leavin. One 158733. And arriving in over here, we have a Scotrail service from Helmsborough Central to Edinburgh Waverley. 334035. And on the rear we have 334028. On the 1227 Scotrail service from Helmsborough Central to Waverley. Departing out now is the 1227 Scotrail service from Helmsborough Central to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 1232 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley, which is 17396. Arriving in now is the 12:31 Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh Waverley. 385113. And the rear of this service is 385110 again. Departing out now is the 12:27 Scotrail service from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in now will be the 12:32 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central. 385034, 385043 I meant. And departing out now is the 12:32 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley. Departing out now is the 12:32 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Central.
The next train at platform 4 will be the 12:36 service to Dunblane, calling at Edinburgh Park, Linlithgow, Polmont, Falkirk, Grahamston, Camelin, Margaret, Stirling.
Arriving in now is the 12:36 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane. Departing out now is the 12:36 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dunblane. Arriving in now is the 12:39 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. And is 158702 on the front. And the rear is 15870741. Arriving in now is the 12:48 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. And departing out now is the 12:39 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. And the service off to Perth is 170451.
The next train at platform 4 will be the 12:42 service to
Just looking out for this next one coming.
Livingston,
And arriving in now is the 12:40, I believe, Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley. 385025.
LNER, Dumbarton East, Dumbarton Central, LNER, Cardross, Craigendoran and Edinburgh Central. This train is formed of 6 carriages.
out now is the 12:40 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. And unfortunately the Transpennine Express got cancelled due to the overhead electric wires between Carlisle and Edinburgh. Arriving in now is the 12:42 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Helensburgh Central, and departing out now is the 12:40 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley. The front on the Helensburgh Central one is 334028. And we will get the rear when it departs. Passing through now, we have a Transpennine Express. This might actually be from Manchester Airport to Edinburgh Waverley, but I'm not sure. Anyway, 397012. And I shall double check with that one in a second. And parting out now is the 12:42 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Helensburgh Central. 334035 is on the rear. Passing through now is 174.7A. And 158701 on an ECS. Oh, and departing out now is a Transpennine Express from Manchester Airport to Edinburgh Waverley.
Safety and security enhancement. This station is covered by
Which
CCTV cameras
we weren't
for
expecting.
safety and security of all.
Arriving in now is the 12:50 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Queen Street, which is 385110. And we'll get the rear when it departs. And arriving in over here is the 12:50 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath.
Platform 3 is the 12:48 service to Edinburgh. This train is on all 6 carriages.
And arriving in over here is the Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley, which is 334040. And 334011. Departing out over here is the 12:50 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. And departing out as well is the other 12:50 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Glasgow Queen Street. The rear of the Glasgow Queen Street service is 385113. And departing out over here is the 1248 Scotrail service from Helensburgh Central to Edinburgh Waverley.
The next train at platform 3 will be the 1251 service to Edinburgh. This train is formed all 4.
Arriving in now is the 1251 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley. 385112's on this service. This train is coming in about 3 minutes late. And departing out now is the 1251 Scotrail service from Dunblane to Edinburgh Waverley. This train is departing out about 4 minutes late. And arriving in now is the 1258 Avanti West Coast service from Edinburgh Waverley to London Euston, which is 390-138. And arriving in over here is the 1257 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley, which is 170-409. Arriving in now is the 1255 Scotrail service from Glasgow Central to Edinburgh Waverley, 385005. This train is coming in about 3 minutes late. And departing out over here is the 1257 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. I think this one's about to depart out very soon, so just wait on this one here. We'll get it departing out in a minute.